Welcome, dear listeners, to another chilling journey into the unknown. If you're a lover of haunted history, ghostly encounters, and spine-tingling tales, you've come to the right place. Tonight, we're delving deep into the shadows of the Peach State, Georgia. This beautiful southern land, rich in history and charm, also harbors dark secrets. From eerie mansions to restless spirits of the past, we're uncovering the top most haunted places in Georgia. So, turn off the lights, grab your favorite comfort blanket, and prepare yourself for a ghostly adventure. Let's begin. The haunting at Moon River Brewing Company, Savannah, Georgia, steeped in history, draped in Spanish moss, and shrouded in mystery. Among its many haunted locations, none send shivers down the spine quite like the Moon River Brewing Company. Once the city's most elegant hotel in the early 1800s, the building had seen its fair share of tragedies, duels, disease, and untimely deaths. Now, the brewery stood where ghosts of the past still roamed, their presence undeniable. The Dare Lucas had never believed in ghosts. A skeptical journalist, he made a living debunking haunted locations and exposing myths. So when he heard about Moon River Brewing Company, he laughed. Another tourist trap, he scoffed. His best friend, Jamie, smirked. Then prove it. Stay overnight in the basement. They say the spirits down there get violent. Lucas rolled his eyes. Fine. But when I come out unscathed, you owe me a beer. Armed with nothing but a flashlight, a voice recorder, and his phone, he arrived at the brewery just as they were closing. The bartender gave him a knowing look. You sure about this? The man asked. The basement's got history. Lucas chuckled. That's the point. The bartender shrugged. Suit yourself? Into the depths the basement was damp, the air thick with mildew and dust. The dim light from his flashlight cast eerie shadows on the crumbling brick walls. Rusted brewing equipment sat abandoned in the corners, relics of the past. He set up his recorder on an old wooden barrel. All right, let's see if anything actually happens, he murmured, hitting record. Hours passed, and nothing. Lucas paced, yawning. Haunted my ass. Then the temperature dropped. A breath of ice brushed his neck. He turned sharply, nothing. A creak. The sound of shuffling footsteps. Lucas held up his flashlight, its beam trembling slightly. Hello? Silence. He exhaled. Old buildings make noise. That's all. Then the recorder crackled. A faint whisper slithered from its speakers. Get out. A chill ran through Lucas. He rewound the tape and listened again. Get out. The voice was clear, low, guttural, unnatural. His heart pounded, but he forced a laugh. Okay, someone's playing tricks. A shadow moved in the far corner. He snapped his flashlight toward it. Nothing there. Then the door slammed shut. Lucas ran to it, pulling hard, but it wouldn't budge. Panic flared in his chest. Something growled behind him. Slowly, he turned. A dark figure stood at the end of the room. Tall. Hulking. No face, just a black void. Lucas stumbled back, his breath ragged. The figure charged. His flashlight flickered out. Darkness swallowed him. The next morning, Jamie arrived at the brewery just after sunrise. When the staff unlocked the doors, she rushed in. Where is he? The bartender frowned. Basement, I guess. They hurried downstairs, and there he was, Lucas, sitting against the wall, staring blankly ahead. His face was pale, his hands trembling. Lucas? Jamie knelt beside him. Are you okay? He slowly turned to her, eyes wide, haunted. There was something down here, he whispered. Jamie exchanged a look with the bartender. What do you mean? Lucas shuddered. I saw it. I heard it. It wanted me to stay. The bartender sighed. That's why we warn people. Jamie helped Lucas up. Let's get you out of here. As they climbed the stairs, the basement door creaked behind them. A whisper followed them up. Get out. Lucas never returned to Moon River Brewing Company, and he never stopped looking over his shoulder. The Kehoe House. Savannah. The Kehoe House stood in the heart of Savannah's historic district, a grand yet eerily quiet mansion wrapped in the weight of time. Its elegant brick exterior, and ornate iron railings whispered of a golden era long past. Tourists gawked at its beauty, but those who knew the history dared not linger too long after sunset. Emily Larson didn't believe in ghosts. She was a travel blogger, determined to spend a night at one of the most haunted inns in America. She had visited cemeteries, abandoned hospitals, and decrepit asylums, each time leaving unimpressed by the so-called hauntings. So when she checked into the Kehoe house, she expected nothing more than a beautifully restored 19th century home with a side of Savannah charm. The hostess, a kind but tight-lipped woman named Mrs. Whitaker, handed her a brass room key. "You're in room 203, she said, pausing before adding, "Let me know if you need anything. We keep extra blankets in the closet. It can get chilly at night." Emily nodded and took the winding staircase to the second floor. The moment she entered her room, a peculiar heaviness settled in the air. The decor was luxurious: antique furniture, velvet drapes, and a large four-poster bed, but something felt off. A faint scent of roses lingered, oddly mixed with a metallic tang. Shrugging it off, she unpacked her things and set up her camera for a late-night live stream. Her followers loved haunted places, and she was ready to debunk another overhyped ghost story. The first ENCOUNTR. The evening was peaceful at first. Emily wandered the house, recording its exquisite details: the grand chandelier, the oil paintings, the whispering firelight in the parlor. But as she returned to her room, a low murmur followed her down the hallway. She stopped, turned. Nothing. Once inside, she settled into bed, typing up notes on her laptop. Midnight struck, and the temperature plummeted. The scent of roses thickened. Then came the sound. A soft giggle. Her fingers froze over the keyboard. The sound had been faint, almost playful, but undeniably real. She turned her camera on and scanned the room. "Okay, guys," she whispered into the lens. "I think I just heard something weird. But no worries, it's probably just an old house settling, right?" The live stream chat buzzed with comments. "Did anyone else hear that?" "Emily, check the closet. The mirror behind you, look." A chill ran down her spine as she turned toward the full-length mirror by the dresser. In the dim glow of her bedside lamp, her reflection looked wrong. The image was delayed, her own face staring back a fraction of a second too late. Her breath hitched. She stood, approaching the glass. "It's just bad lighting," she muttered. Then, behind her reflection, something moved. A child. A little boy, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, stood just over her shoulder, watching her with hollow eyes. Emily spun around. Nothing. The mirror remained unchanged. But the whisper came again, softer this time. "Mama?" Her heart pounded. The Kehoe house was known for ghostly children. Rumors swirled about the Kehoe twins, two young boys who had mysteriously vanished, their fate unknown. Some said they suffocated in a chimney. Others believed they drowned in the basement well. Emily swallowed hard. Maybe this was different from the places she had been before. The dead of NIGHT. Determined to document everything, she grabbed her phone and walked the dimly lit hallway. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, shifting as if they had lives of their own. The parlor downstairs was silent, save for the grandfather clock's rhythmic ticking. Then, a floorboard creaked, right behind her. She turned sharply. A shadow darted across the hallway. Small, childlike feet pitter-pattered against the wooden floor. Her breath caught in her throat. "Who's there?" A door to an empty room stood slightly ajar. She pushed it open, revealing antique furniture draped in white sheets. Dust particles floated in the air, disturbed by her presence. Then, something shifted under one of the sheets. The shape was small, as if a child was hiding beneath. Emily took a cautious step forward, phone raised. "Hello?" Silence. Then, the sheet collapsed, as if whatever had been under it had simply vanished. Emily staggered back, her pulse hammering. She needed to leave. Now. As she turned to flee, she heard it. The sound of breathing. Wet, ragged breathing. Right next to her ear. A weight pressed against her shoulder, icy fingers grazing her skin. She stumbled away, nearly tripping over herself as she bolted from the room. The final WRNING heart racing. She made it back to her room and locked the door. She grabbed her phone to check her live stream. The chat was chaotic. Emily, leave now. Did you see the hand behind you, the mirror? Check the mirror. Slowly, she turned back to the mirror. There, standing right behind her reflection, was a woman, pale, hollow-eyed. Her black dress hung off her skeletal frame, damp as if soaked in water. Her lips moved soundlessly, but Emily could hear the words clear as day. You shouldn't be here. The lights flickered. The air turned suffocating. And then, a sharp, invisible force slammed into her chest. She gasped, knocked off her feet as the lamp shattered, plunging the room into darkness. Pain shot through her skull as she scrambled for her phone's flashlight. The moment the beam illuminated the room, the shadows recoiled. The scent of roses dissipated. The presence was gone. Shaking, Emily grabbed her bag and fled. She didn't care that it was 3 a.m. She didn't care about her expensive reservation. She only knew she had to leave before the house claimed her. 2. As she stumbled into the night, she glanced up at the Kehoe house one last time. In the second-floor window, a pale face watched her go, smiling, waiting. The whispering dead of Bonaventure, Savannah had always been known for its ghosts. Tourists came in droves, snapping pictures of moss-draped oaks and wandering old cemeteries in search of spirits. But for lifelong Savannah native Ellie Marsh, ghosts weren't a novelty. They were a warning. Ellie had grown up hearing stories about Bonaventure Cemetery, stories passed down from her grandmother, who swore that the dead there were never alone. The statues whisper, child, her grandmother would say, staring off like she was remembering something she didn't want to. They whisper to those who listen. Ellie never believed it. Not really. Until she found herself locked inside the cemetery one fateful night. A dare in the dark. It started as a stupid dare. Her best friend James had always been the adventurous type, dragging Ellie into places she'd rather avoid. That night, he wanted to prove that Bonaventure was nothing but an old cemetery, no ghosts, no curses, no whispering statues. We sneak in, stay for an hour, and leave. Easy. James smirked, shaking the chain-link fence that surrounded the cemetery. Ellie hesitated. The air smelled thick, damp, and wrong. The Spanish moss overhead swayed, though there was no breeze. I don't know, James. We shouldn't mess with this place. Come on, Ellie. It's just stone and trees. He climbed over before she could argue, landing softly on the other side. With a groan, she followed. Inside, the cemetery was eerily quiet. Their footsteps crunched on the gravel path as they walked past Elizabeth Telfair's grave, her stone angel looming with hollow eyes. Ellie swore she saw its mouth twitch, but she shook it off. See? No ghosts, James said, tapping on a crypt's iron gate. Just stories. A sharp whisper sliced through the silence. Ellie turned sharply. Did you hear that? James frowned. What? Another whisper. Soft but insistent. This time, they both heard it. Leave. It came from the direction of Little Gracie's grave, one of Bonaventure's most famous ghosts. The life-size statue of a young girl stood solemnly, her stone dress frozen in time. James stepped closer, peering at the grave. Hello? Ellie's breath hitched. James, don't. The air grew heavy. The statue's eyes seemed deeper, darker. James laughed nervously. Maybe the stories are true. Ellie turned to leave. She wasn't about to tempt whatever was whispering from the shadows. But James wasn't moving. He was staring at Little Gracie's statue. His face was pale. His lips were moving, but no sound came out. James? Ellie's voice was a whisper now, barely audible. James reached out as if something unseen was holding his wrist. Then he gasped, loud, ragged, like someone had punched the air from his lungs. Ellie grabbed him, shaking his shoulders. James, stop messing around! His eyes snapped to her, wide and terrified. She's not a statue, he whispered. She's watching. Ellie yanked him away, and suddenly, the night shifted. The cemetery was darker, the trees taller, the sky a suffocating void, and the statues had moved. The maze of the dead. Ellie ran, pulling James behind her, but the paths twisted in ways she didn't recognize. The cemetery wasn't letting them leave. The whispering grew louder. Hundreds of voices, some sobbed. Some giggled. Some begged. James tripped, scraping his knee on the gravel. Ellie! A shadow loomed over them. Not human. Not alive. The figure of a woman in mourning black, her veil shifting though there was no wind. She lifted her hands, fingers long and wrong, stretching toward James. Ellie grabbed a rusted iron cross from a nearby grave and swung it wildly. The shadow recoiled with an awful, screeching wail. James bolted, dragging Ellie with him. They ran until they saw the cemetery gates ahead, now wide open. They didn't question it. They sprinted. The price of the dead. The moment they crossed the threshold, the whispers stopped. They collapsed on the pavement outside, panting. James's hands were shaking. Ellie turned back, expecting to see the shadowy woman. But there was nothing. Just Bonaventure Cemetery, silent and unmoving. But James never entered another cemetery after that night. And Ellie, she swore that sometimes, when she passed Bonaventure, she could still hear the whispers, calling her back. And there you have it, 3 of Georgia's most haunted locations, each with its own terrifying tales and restless spirits. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, one thing is certain: the past never truly stays buried. So the next time you find yourself wandering through Savannah's misty streets or standing before an ancient mansion in the moonlight, ask yourself, are you really alone? Thank you for joining me on this haunted journey through Georgia. If you enjoyed tonight's tales, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another spine-chilling story. Have a haunted tale of your own? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Until next time, stay curious and stay haunted.